Welcome to Confessing the Faith, a theological and devotional walk through the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith. I'm your host, Sam Waldron. I'm one of the pastors of Grace Reformed Baptist Church in Owensboro, Kentucky, and the president of Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary. Today we will be considering the subject of God and the Holy Trinity, once more from chapter 2 of the Confession. And today we take up paragraph 2. Modern men and contemporary theologians find it difficult in their minds to reconcile the classical theism of the Christian tradition and the Scriptures with a God who is relational. The fault is in their minds and logic, not in classical theism. Paragraph 2 of chapter 2 has for its explicit emphasis, its very theme, the relations of God to the world and mankind. Listen to what it says. I'm going to read that paragraph in its entirety. God, having all life, glory, goodness, blessedness in and of himself, is alone in and unto himself all-sufficient, not standing in need of any creature which he hath made, nor deriving any glory from them, but only manifesting his own glory in, by, unto, and upon them. He is the alone fountain of all being, of whom, through whom, and to whom are all things. And he hath most sovereign dominion over all creatures, to do by them, for them, or upon them, whatsoever himself pleaseth. In his sight all things are open and manifest. His knowledge is infinite, infallible, and independent upon the creature, so as nothing is to him contingent or uncertain. He is most holy in all his counsels, in all his works, and in all his commands. To him is due from angels and men whatsoever worship, service, or obedience. As creatures, they owe unto the Creator, and whatever he is further pleased to require of them. 5 relations of God to the creation are specified in this great paragraph. Think about them with me one at a time and briefly. His self-sufficient independence from them is the first thing emphasized. And the point is this: God does not need a relationship with creation to be God. He does not even need creation to be God. He doesn't need creation to be a happy God. He was the blessed and only sovereign before and without creation. Your old Sunday school teacher was wrong when she told you that God created the world because he was lonely. The second relationship which God has with his creatures is his sovereign dominion over them. As his creatures, they belong to him absolutely and completely. He is what he is described to be in Genesis 14:19, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. Have you ever acknowledged from the heart the fact that God owns you utterly? His absolute knowledge of them is the third thing this paragraph emphasizes with regard to God's relation to the creatures. Open theism is famous for its evangelical assertion of a God who does not know the future comprehensively. Such an assertion is absolutely contrary to the biblical and Christian view of God affirmed by the Confession. The Confession actually says that God's knowledge of creation is independent of the creatures, and it surely is. Absolutely nothing surprises God in creation because he is absolutely knowledgeable of the creation, past, present, and future. The creation is what it is because his plan is what it is, and he knows his plan perfectly. The fourth thing emphasized by this paragraph is his utter sanctity before the creation. Let me remind you of what the Confession says. He is most holy in all his counsels, in all his works, and in all his commands. Thus, everything he says, does, and requires is to be viewed with great reverence and holy awe. No complaining about his ways is ever appropriate. Finally and fifthly, it follows that God has intrinsic claims upon his creatures as their God. Just because he is God, the Confession says, to him is due from angels and men whatsoever worship, service, or obedience as creatures they owe unto the Creator, and whatever he is further pleased to require of them. Nothing he may ask of us by way of suffering, service, or obedience is beyond his rights. Perhaps you are struggling right now with some suffering or some service or some obedience that God is asking of you. It seems like, to your finite mind, too much to ask. But are you forgetting who he is and what he has done for you and what he has promised to do for you in the glory that is to come? No, my dear friend, whatever he asks of you or ordains for you, as the old hymn says, is right. And as the hymn goes on to say, holy his word abideth.